Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we are breaking down our picks for the top five and one worst level three cleric spells.
Indeed.
All right, how was this list for you?
Hard.
Yeah, it was
Well,
kind of hard for me to, not because there were like so many great options, just
mhm,
there because there weren't. Maybe there are a couple of ones that were easy, but I don't know. And even for the worst one, there wasn't anything so terrible that I said, "Oh, this is definitely the one." This is level three cleric spells to me were like a lot of middle of the road, compared to things like the wizard spell list, for instance. That's when level three is like, whoa, then you get your fireball or fly. Like, I mean, we got walk on water. Like,
mhm.
how impressive is that if the wizard has fly?
Yeah,
Like,
it's a ritual spell though, so it's not that
yeah.
bad. It's
No, I'm
just
not saying it's
like,
bad. I'm just
yeah,
saying, like, if the apostles were all flying around, we wouldn't be so impressed with Jesus.
good point. Uh, in this context, Jesus is a wizard. I love. Um, anyway, yeah, I thought that the third level wizard or cleric spells, there were a lot of ones that I'm like, yeah, that's just fine. And getting ones that were like, I think this defines cleric was kind of hard. Finding ones that I was like, this is. There were three that I was like, yeah, this is pretty much all like right down the middle. Cleric third level spells. This is their big upgrades. After that, it was a lot of like middle ground of like, it's not that great. There were like a handful of ones where I was like, this could be the worst one. But most of them, and I think this is one of the first times I found that, like, I don't think there's a spell on this list of all the character level spells that I just would never prepare. And this might be the first time of all of our lists that that's been the case. Because normally there's like one spell where I'm like, nope, it doesn't have any business being on any character sheet ever. But even like Daylight, and I'm no fan of Daylight, I can foresee there being specific environments because you're prepared caster as a cleric where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna take daylight for this one specific thing so we can, have bright light and not have disadvantage against the super dark vision people. That's not to say like it's a good spell, but it made finding
Yeah.
a worse one I thought quite a bit harder.
All right. Well, let's start with the best. Do you want to start the list today?
Sure. So like I just said, clerics are prepared casters. That makes it so you flexibly get what you need. It makes all of their spells a little bit. It makes spells that are more situational a little bit better because you can readily get access to them without having to like waste time on your sheet when you don't need them. That's just for context. Most of these don't have that problem. Most of these are ones you'll basically always be happy putting on your list. I think. My number one. I think this is the
Oh,
akin
wait,
to the.
sorry. It's also worth pointing out again. Well, as you just heard, Sam puts a lot more thought into the specifics of things than I do. I just pick them and like, ooh, that one's cool. But
I
yeah, Sam's doing this properly. He's also ranking his in order, where mine is just a top five in any given order.
I feel like these lists are Bob's favorite, like ones that you actually like, and these are me trying to say I think these are the best five of the options for the average character. Um, so yeah, my number one, I think this is probably gonna make your list. I think this is like defines the tier of play. I don't think it's interesting. I actually think it's a bummer at a lot of tables to have it exist, but I think Revivify is probably the akin to Fireball whenever you are playing a fifth level cleric, where you're just like, oh, I've got a third level spell slot. People cannot die near me anymore. That's kind of where I think this spell fits as far as third level wizard spells go. I think Revivify like declares this is part of Cleric's fantasy in the tier of play.
Revivify definitely did make my list.
Mhm.
Um, what that has a 1 minute window where you can use it after the
Yes.
character drops, right? Yeah, that's so you can finish the fight.
Yeah. I
Right.
think that's probably like the really important bit is you have enough time that if someone died on the battle map, you can get to them within 8 rounds and be able to get them back up as an action, right?
Yeah, see,
Revivify
because
is
you're saying, your complaint was, dying is near me is impossible now. That's yeah, I think it might be cool if it were like a 10-second window. Then you have
sure.
to make a choice. Am I going to bring back my friend or am I going to, finish the baddie?
Mhm.
You know, but that's not what it is.
Sure. And as far as like complaints go, I think that Revivify to me, I used to be the kind of DM where I was like, oh, but permadeath is more meaningful and interesting, and having characters die is a fun part of the game. And for me as a player, I definitely feel that way. I like when my characters permanently die, especially when they permanently die in ways that aren't just like cheap random crits.
Mm.
Revivify is really, I think, the best band-aid for cheap random crits they could add to the game, because it's just like oh crap, I didn't mean for the dragon to crit, even though it was doing more damage than you were ever possibly used to. And in the first round, it just killed the halfling, because the halfling wizard had like 15 HP because they took a -1 con for some reason and just instantly died. Revivify is a way to keep that character in the game without it feeling cheap. I think that's useful. And the other, like, there are plenty of ways to kill characters permanently. You have to get a body still if you want to revivify them. And if there's no body, and there are plenty of ways for there not to be a body whenever it comes to death in D&D. So, like, there are ways for characters to still have permanent death and stuff. It's just, I think, a really great meaningless death no longer really has a place at the table, and revivifies sort of the cleric's way of saying, I prevent that from occurring outright. And that's nice.
Yeah. Let's see what's on my list. I got Spirit Guardians.
Yep, that made mine.
That's on yours, yeah. And yeah, it's just a fun whirlwind of spirits, meat grinding everybody around you.
Yeah, I think we talked about Spirit Guardians already, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it. The reason I really like it, I think I mentioned it prior, this feels really distinct from a lot of like the wizard damage types. I think Guardian of Faith is in a similar one where you get like a set quantity of damage that things take when they come into the space. I like that this is a similar, you feel stuff around you. When you cast it, you protect people from it, but anyone else that comes into it makes a save or takes damage. It makes it feel like a pretty concrete, this is a space that we're going to lock down, and monsters are going to come at you. They're going to run into the damage type. You're going to get 68 damage pretty readily out of this, and that's as good as Fireball if that happens. That is a way that you can sort of differentiate between wizards, how they do area effect damage as a full caster, and clerics is protective versus offensive magic.
Right.
Magic that you throw on the backline enemies, or magic you put around yourself to deal with invading enemies. It's not as good as the wizard's damage spells, but it's not supposed to be. And I think it hits a really great sweet spot as far as like you're really willing to concentrate on this. 15 feet is just enough that you're pretty like comfortable being right behind the paladin and still getting a good amount of width where anything running into the space is getting beat up pretty badly. You can do some key positioning stuff with this. I don't know. I'm all around a pretty big fan of Spirit Guardians. I think this locks down clerics as you really want to be, if you're not like light domain specifically, you really want to be within the first like 5 to 10 feet of a fight whenever like at the enemy line, right? So you can leverage this kind of effect.
I like the flavor too. I envision this like Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they open the Ark of the Covenant and all the spirits are flying around melting people's faces off.
Mm-hmm. That's I choose that you also like, you envision it with the effects of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like with the really cheesy watery melty face that just practically done looks so weird and creepy. I love it.
And I mean, as a bonus, you can pick your flavor.
Yes,
you can have angels or like demons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
radiant damage is probably slightly better than necrotic, but it won't matter like 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So next on my list,
Guardians.
Yeah, that was my number 3. So let's just get my number 2 out of the way. I think Dispel Magic slaps. I think Dispel Magic is a hygiene spell, if you will. It's something you pick up because it's an important way to be able to deal with some problems. Love Dispel Magic.
Dispel Magic made my list because it didn't make my wizard list, and I felt bad about that.
That's good, because I think the cleric spells are slightly a bit worse than the wizard spells. Yeah, Dispel Magic, it solves any problem. It's a spell that like you will find at 3rd level or 5th level, you will take it alongside another 3rd level spell, probably Revivify, maybe Spirit Guardians, that you'll be like, all right, these are the things that I will do with these spell slots. I'll have 1 Dispel Magic in case we need it. I will have either Revivify in case we need it, or a Spirit Guardians to be more like offensive, right? You'll have a sort of proactive thing to deal with it. I think past that, I think once you're like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th level, you should just always have Dispel Magic on your sheet for more or less the time if you want to have like a really robust tool at dealing with most magical problems. It's cheap. 3rd level in the mid tiers is not particularly a high bar to clear for an effect that beats some effects that otherwise you couldn't. Getting a Sanctuary-like effect off the Lich is really relevant. Getting, turning something from ethereal to non-ethereal is super important. Being able to dispel illusions, being able to dispel summons. Dispel Magic is like a catch-all. and it's a kind of like again like a reactive. It's a counter spell that's more reactive. You have to let the thing be cast, and then you can get rid of it. Probably a little bit more fun for that reason too. I'm a big fan of Dispel Magic. I think it's pretty critical to basic counteracting of other enemy magical forces, and if you're in a high magic game, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Moving right along.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't
What does
have.
that play?
We already covered Dispel Magic on the other list, so whatever. This is where I started having trouble.
Yeah, me too.
All right. I I don't feel confident about this, but I picked Clairvoyance.
No, Clairvoyance did not make my list. I think it could have, maybe, just because this is clerics don't get familiars. Why do you Why do you put Clairvoyance on yours?
Again, because there weren't a lot of better options.
Sure.
But yeah, I figured it's useful, right? It's invisible. You can choose to see or hear what's going on. You can put it anywhere that you're familiar with, or like it says an obvious place. You're not like behind a door or something where you haven't been. But if you've been inside, this guy's house or something that you want to spy on, you can put it in his living room.
It does have a
Listen to
range
his
of a mile.
conversation. Well,
Yeah.
you can be within a mile of his living room. That's fine.
No, I was saying that as a boon to it. I was like, yeah,
Oh,
this is
right.
it's got a long range, so you can put it where you need it most of the time. Um, my only struggle with Clairvoyance is because of the way I like to play the game and because of the people around me that have played the game with me have seen how good they are. I think familiars make the spell non-functional. As like, if you have a familiar, you probably don't need this. And that's just like not even like you as a person as a cleric. You as a party have a
Yeah.
familiar, you probably don't need this. And that's why I don't find Clairvoyance to be all that useful in my games. I've seen it cast a couple of times. I've been like, it's fine. It gives you the sensory effect that you're looking for. It's a fine way to interface with the world. I don't really have an issue with it. Is it the best 5? Maybe. I'm not that confident in my last 2. So,
all right. Well, what's one of yours?
all right, my number 4. This one I think is something you don't take at 5th level, but it's something you take in place of Healing Word past like 9th level. It's Mass Healing Word. I think Mass Healing Word is it's an important upgrade over Healing Word, as it's a area you pick a bunch of things that go down and get them all up simultaneously, but also it will do the Healing Word thing of getting one person up and give some other people some bonus HP. Mass Healing Word is just a really efficient action economy tool for giving your team a really needed boost. It's a really efficient tool of making sure you've got the best edge possible, that people aren't wasting their turns on 0, that you can say, oh crap, things went really south. They went down and they went down. Now in one turn, they're both up. That's a pretty big, meaningful upside that you want to have on your sheet. It being able to take just one turn to do that is huge. So I think it's not necessarily something I'm taking at 5th level. It can be. If you're going against like routinely lethal fights, maybe you're thinking about it. I think more often than not, Revivify takes that spot instead. But once you've got a little more breathing room, you can start regularly preparing this almost in place of Healing Word. You probably want both in particularly lethal games. If you only have room for one, though, I think this is probably the better option to take past 9th level.
This I'm glad you picked this one because it didn't make my list, but it was very close. It was a toss up between, this Clairvoyance and my last pick. Yeah. All right. So my last pick was, what is that? Glyph of Warding.
Glyph of Warding is neat.
Yeah. It's the only problem is there aren't enough instances where you are staying put and defending a place. If that was the case, I mean, I guess maybe at some tables that's happening. And if it is, then I think that bumps up Glyph of Warding quite a bit. If you can set up a situation where you have to defend a place, then this one can be a lot of fun, either with the explosive runes or just the multitude of spell effects that you can cause. You can use for good things for yourself. If you get into a tight situation, step on the glyph, boom. Bolster yourself.
Glyph of Warding has, I think, a lot of potential for cheesy munchkin nonsense. I think it is potentially outrageously busted because of the way it sort of deals with spells in a way that other things don't, right? So like it targets a single creature or an area that's pretty varied. The spell has like you can I think how does it interact with concentration again, right? Like, I don't think it eats your concentration. It uses it just lasts to the full duration, which means it's a concentration-less version of the prepared spell. Now, you still have to store a cleric spell in it, which I think makes it a bit worse on clerics specifically, because like we've talked about at the beginning of this video, I'm not seeing a lot of super notable options. I think you'd probably take explosive runes over like maybe no, maybe take Spirit Guardians over explosive runes if you're going to defend a spot, right? That makes sense to me. And then you have a 10-minute duration giant area of damage of just like Spirit Guardians hanging out there. That seems decent. If you can get an hour in the villain's lair, this can be a giant nuisance. It's a spell that has some application at using it like proactively. It's just really hard to find that window. It's really unlikely that it's going to be consistently able to be put somewhere you want it and have that matter. And I don't see a lot of games that are there's really, like, again, if you want to do a defend the castle situation, if you want to have build your own dungeon from the player's perspective, you'll do that once. You'll be like, hey, DM, we want to do this. And the DM will be like, great. Your DM will say, I want you to do this. Here's the setup. You'll do the thing one time. You'll take Glyph of Warding for that reason, which is you're prepared caster, so you can do that. It'll be great there. And then past that, it probably is not making your sheet. It also hurts that it costs 200 gold to pop.
And that you can't move it 10 feet away. You know, that's if you cast it on something that you're carrying around, then portable trap. That's fun.
I wish it was like you could have one up at once and you could carry it around with you and just like you just have a grenade. I think that'd be fun. But that's more of a class feature than this is anyway, so we don't need it to be that much better. I still think this is quite good. It's just very narrow. It's very good in those narrow circumstances. It's just a very narrow circumstance, but it's good.
All right. Is that your list finished?
No, I got one more.
Oh, you got one more? All right. What do you got?
My final option. This is the one I'm least confident about. I think this is a spell that just like uniquely I adore. It's Speak with Dead. I love Speak with Dead. I love Speak with Dead so much. This is a fantastic little world information gathering tool that I want on so many characters just because I love talking to dead people. I love the thematics of conjuring the spirits and asking them questions. I like that you can, with a DM that really loves this kind of thing, it can balloon out beyond just asking the questions and getting some basic information. Instead, you can like actually interface with the spirit and learn more about the world and conjure ghosts in a very occultist kind of way that I think is really sweet. And you could, where like the warlock gets this through an invocation, the wizards do it with like, super evil, spooky magics. I find like the cleric and bard versions of it tend to be more of you must avenge me, or I cannot believe, or I'm comfortably sitting on a lofty pillow on the clouds while I'm speaking to you, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different approaches that these will look like between the characters that I really love. And I think as far as like having a unique information gathering tool goes, this one, I see more clerics take this than I see wizards take this, because the wizard spell list is a lot more competitive. So I think that this ends up feeling more like a cleric spell. And in that instance, it makes the cleric feel like it has a more unique option. I really wish it was just a cleric bard spell. I don't think wizards need this. I like that it's in their wheelhouse. I like that this is how they explore the world. They deal with life, death, and the morality axis of, heaven and hell and shit, right? And that fits their identity really well. So having this be a great exploration tool, a great tool to learn about the world, to learn about their target, to learn about, you killed some goblins, you won't come back up to life, but we're asking you some questions. I think it's really fun.
Not up to life.
Not up to life. Up to undeath.
Yeah. All right.
I also want to make an honorable mention. Animate Dead is not a good third level spell, but it is a decent upper tier spell. So if you're getting 3 or 4 zombies with Animate Dead, using a 6th level slot or higher, it tends to be quite a bit better than whenever you're getting 1 zombie with a 3rd level slot. I thought I'd mention that because it's a pretty big core identity to upper tier, some like evil upper tier clerics, and it's pretty useful on those builds. I just find at 3rd level, it tends to be really underwhelming. Getting 1 zombie for a 3rd level spell slot is like the worst summoning effect in human history, because some zombies are just like, compared to the Tasha stuff, compared to the 2nd level summon beast, I don't want to. Nope, that's not good enough. They like meander around at 20-foot move speeds and double over and die from a single arrow. Like, no, they're not great. So I would highly recommend skeletons are a bit better. They get like short posts, so you might be able to do stuff with that. It's the summoning option you have here. But I think you consider Animate Dead, even though it's a 3rd level spell slot, more so in the middle to upper tiers whenever you have a little bit better access to more robust spells.
Animate Dead was another one that almost made my list. I forget which one. I had to I was going back and forth between that one and one of my other picks, probably
Mhm.
Clairvoyance. But I don't know why I chose Clairvoyance over this, but whatever.
I don't
What's
know
done
either, to
is
be
done.
perfectly honest. I don't think Clairvoyance is
Yeah.
better than it, but
No.
Clairvoyance is still fine. Like I said,
All
there's just
right.
a lot of files that are like, yeah. I mean, I would prepare that sometimes. Clairvoyance is one of those, like, I mean, I would sometimes. I don't know if it's best. I definitely think this is the same with Speak with Dead. Like, I think Anime Dead might earn this slot over Speak with Dead. It's
Well,
close.
just I mean, you like the thematics of the Speak with Dead, and I feel the same about Animate Dead.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Well,
it's
I'm a
it,
necromancer at heart.
perhaps
I
not.
also love Anime Dead.
Yeah, perhaps not effective, but certainly cool.
I think there are going to be some. I think Speak with Dead does have an effective use that some other spells don't, which does make it powerful. It's
I
just
was talking
niche.
about Animate Dead
Oh, fair.
at the level.
Yeah. Oh, at the level, yeah, I 100% agree.
All right, well, I guess that brings us to our one worst.
This is the one I'm most interested in. The rest of this list, I was like, yeah, these are all fine. I'm pretty into all these. The top three are, yeah, they're pretty baller. Where are you at? What's your worst?
All right, I'll go first. Feign Death.
Feign Death. I forgot it existed, so that's probably my slot.
That's. I think we have this conversation every time we do a
But
worst.
normally it's reversed.
Yeah.
Why did Feign Death be your worst, Bob?
There are, I guess, like fun shenanigans to be had with it, but I've never seen it used. I've never. I mean, you really have to put all the pieces of a situation in place to make this useful, and I don't think anybody's doing that. It's
Yeah.
if the occasion happens where it would be fun to use, all right, but I don't think that's ever happening.
It feels like a spell that you make the plan ahead of time specifically so you can use Feign Death, right? It feels like you want to use Feign Death. How do we make a plan that incorporates Feign Death? Is
Yeah,
where the spell feels like it fits, right?
it's like
It's
Romeo and Juliet, but they fucked it up.
exactly. You're doing it the right way. I find that like it's really fun still to me. These kinds of spells I have such a bad time with because I would prepare them all the time and I never use them. I'm a sucker for these kinds of tools. I'm a sucker for these little like fun utility bits. Um, this is absolutely fits that category. I love Feign Death. I think I've seen Feign Death cast once, and that includes the times that I put it on my character sheet as a cleric. I was never the one to cast it. And it's a ritual spell, so like you can definitely find like if you force it, you can make it
Yeah.
happen. Um, it is quite bad. You probably shouldn't ever be preparing Feign Death just because there's gotta be better. This invisibility is so much better than this. Not going to be a cleric spell, but you probably summon the party with invisibility. Like you don't need this ever.
Or there's sitting very still.
Yes, there is just actually feigning death, right? Like that's an option that's always allowed.
All right, well, what was yours?
My worst is tongues.
Tongues?
I went back and forth on this for a long while, and I think I just came to the conclusion that tongue solves a problem that no one actually has. Languages in 5e are very straightforward. You speak common, which everything speaks. And then you have a flavor language. You have your kobold, or you have your draconic for kobolds. You have your elvish for elves that you can be like, hoity toity, only elves talking to elves. You have like the dwarves with their dwarven language, the dwarven script and stuff for like merchants and stuff. You can use languages really well as a world building tool, and you can use them as a really great tool to sort of differentiate groups and allegiances. You'll find that like um making a band of mercenaries, specifically speaking dwarvish, even between like the human, the halfling, the two dwarves in the party, will make that group sound and feel like a cohesive unit that has their own shared sort of identity.
Hmm.
Tongues is never solving any of those problems. There aren't any problems really presented there. Language is more used as a way to enrich the narrative, as a way to enrich the story. People don't want to have to be like, I bust out the translator, let's then communicate with them. You will occasionally have moments where you'll be like, well, they don't want the hoity-toity high elves won't talk to us in our common tongue, even though they definitely understand it. So we need our high elf buddy to translate or whatever. In most
Well, I was
cases,
thinking more of a case where they don't want you to know what they're saying, so they're speaking in their own language, but you're listening in.
I find it really hard to say that like tongues is something that I'm preparing for that problem, right? Like, when are you, if you're eavesdropping specifically, maybe you, but like the cleric isn't the one doing the eavesdropping, so you touch the rogue, they go off and do the espionage and listen in, and they can understand and come back with the plan. Sure, maybe that's a use case for it. I don't think that's happening as much. It's probably happening more than the feign death scenario, so you're probably right, the feign death should be the worst. But it's still like this is a really, really niche problem that's actually being solved here that I think is happening once or twice a campaign. Because like I said, the vast majority of, like, me as a DM, as someone I like to think puts a little bit of thought into their world building, not as much as some others, but I try to make it like there's a cohesive theme, there's some good ideas, there's a narrative, there's meaning, and people do things for reasons. I don't find language jumps to the forefront of my mind basically ever. And if you're overhearing some people, if the DM's like, I know they're going to go to overhear them, I'm going to have them talk in a foreign language to obfuscate their plans, that can often make the party feel like they're wasting time. It can be kind of an unfun experience just to be like dirtling around, going over and finally getting to a spot where you can overhear things happening. There's not talking in common for some reason, whenever most things have been talking in common before. So it requires a lot of work to the precedence for that problem in the first place, where you have to know you're in a world that has all of these people talking in diverse languages all the time to each other and hiding information that way. I all in all find that the problem doesn't really come up because it just, common is such an easy catch-all just to say everyone speaks the same language. We don't have to have these communication breakdowns that can lead to frustrations or anything like that. That's how I typically see language used. That doesn't mean that doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that tongues doesn't have a place and doesn't solve small problems. I just think most tables don't have those problems. That's why I think it makes my worst.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said. And it was a contender for mine as well.
There are a lot of contenders. Like, this isn't doing a lot. It's doing something. Like, I've played characters with tongues. My last warlock I played took tongues. Specifically within the Book of Ancient Secrets, he picked it up. Just because, like, or not in the Book of Ancient Secrets, because it's not a ritual spell. He just he prepared it because, or learned it because that's what his character's job on the ship was. He was an anthropologist. He was sort of supposed to navigate and deal with different peoples and groups. So tongues was part of that, like that role play. I'd cast the spell in role play like 3 or 4 times throughout the whole campaign. And it had no practical effect on like exploration or navigating the world or engaging in dungeons or anything to that effect. It was just flavor. It was whenever I was actually DMing sessions and my character would run off with the captain to go do negotiations. He was brought along because he knew tongues. That was the reason that he did that. And then I ran the sessions that were, going around doing other things and stuff, the rest of the party. That's how I handled it. And that's where I'm like, I don't see much value in this spell beyond that.
All right. Well, there's a lot of talking about why you don't like tongues.
It's fine, Listen, this video is going short. I need to make sure we padded out that time with a juicy sample.
I'm sure our viewers appreciate that.
You just want to listen to 5 minutes of
20 minutes of filler.
Listen,
all right.
I am curious to hear from our viewers. This is, I think, one of the more open and up for, like, very clearly up for debate lists. I think this has some of the most interesting best worst options. Bestokers could have been our worst. Create Food and Water could have been our worst. Maybe something like Daylight does make your best. I can't fathom why, but maybe it does. Life Transference is an interesting option. Magic Circle is neat. Like, there's some interesting spells on these lists. Even Sending, where you might consider them as best cleric spells just because of the way you prepare casting functions and because of how the cleric class interfaces with them. I'd love to see the lists below for people's varying opinions.
I would too. Yeah, there were a lot of options on here that, like, neat things are happening, but couldn't bring myself to put them at the top 5, or certainly not the worst. But
I think that domain spells is another big contributor as to why, like, these don't necessarily feel riveting. Most of your riveting stuff comes from your domain, typically. The stuff that you get super excited about, like the stuff that's in your archetype. Which leaves a lot of cleric spells feeling kind of generic. And, like, it's fine utility. It's just not that exciting. It's not like a specific fantasy I have.
All right, yeah, let us know what you think. Let us know what your picks were or are. And we will see you for level 4 spells and for a bunch of stuff between now and then. Nailed it. All right.
Nailed it, Bob.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.